So really to look at projects, I just thought I would remind us of, what we did up front to try and decide what projects fit with the damages from this lawsuit. And you guys spent a couple meetings going through the BNRC guiding principles, and they should be in your packet there. You guys in the audience want those information, it's up here to just grab one. But I just wanted to take 2 minutes and go through this, just so you guys are looking through that lens when you think about these projects. So these stage 1 criteria are what is in Superfund law. That's out of 40 CFR. And you can see the list there. It's, it's just basically the highlights. And then at the bottom here, these two are added by the state. Fed state tribal policies, rules and laws, and then the resources of special interest for the tribes and the Department of the Interior. And then you guys came together and said, well, what is important to you? And you came out with these stage 2 policy criteria, and you wanted to see direct restoration of the natural resource that the dams were from, and that was the injury to the alluvial aquifer and the surface waters of Silver Bow and Blacktail Creek in Butte Area 1. And you also thought it was important to get public support, and you wanted to see these projects directly benefit Butte Area 1 and the Silver Bow Creek ecosystem health. And you guys also put a great value on long-term effectiveness. You wanted to see matching funds or cost sharing. You also asked us to look for opportunities to integrate with remedy. And you also wanted us to avoid using restoration money on something that should be normal government function. So that's the list you came up with. And then, they're all pretty well spelled out in your handout that you have. But I just thought I'd bring those to your attention, and then we'll just go ahead and start looking at these projects. Then this is your guiding principles. Basically you're making a recommendation to the governor, and you nailed it. I thought this document was right on the money. You said you have an enormous task and limited funds, and you were going to seek solutions to provide a clean and healthful environment. And that included safe drinking water, and that clean and healthful environment is right out of the Montana Constitution. And you understand that restoration's goal is to try and return the injured resource to the baseline condition. And you wanted to promote opportunities, again, to coordinate with remedy. But again, you didn't want to see restoration funds used to conduct remedy. You wanted to make informed decisions that make long-term effects. And man, I think we spent 2 years getting acquainted with Butte Area 1, and we did probably $2 million worth of studies to look at the injuries, and that information provided you with what you needed to make good decisions. And you favored projects that restore over projects that replace. And you wanted to conduct a transparent decision-making process. I think we've had 104 public meetings, so I think you got an A+ for that. And you wanted to seek and encourage public involvement. I know we've been to the Council of Commissioners a few times to talk with them and share your information with them. And you wanted to proceed with due diligence. And I would say that restoration in Butte got out ahead of remedy, actually. And we're still waiting for some remedy things to happen. And here we are, just about ready to finish up. So I think you have done your due diligence, and we've actually made some good investments. And the one thing you wanted to do too is you wanted to help remove the stigma of Superfund. It's tough to do. I know I got kids in sports, and every time we go out of town, that's the cheer you always hear is dirty water. No matter what town you go to, it's dirty water. And that is a stigma that will probably be hung around our necks until we're all in the grave. So, but your end goal was to have restore to Butte Area 1 and Silverbow and Blacktail Creek that your generation and the generations to follow can enjoy. So that's kind of, I just wanted you, when we talk about these projects, it would be great to have this, your goals in the back of your mind when you look at these projects. And remember last meeting, we talked about the money coming back from the parrot, and once the balances come back from the parrot, 30% goes into the upper Silverbow Creek corridor, and that was the removal of the parrot tailings category. So there's $250,000 there. The mine waste area restoration and re-veg, that's what Norm did and what Silverbow is doing with the trees and what Montana Tech Native Plants is doing. So there's almost 1.9 million there. Stream restoration is a category that we haven't really used any of the money yet. There's about almost 2 million in that category. Municipal water system doesn't get any money from the parrot payback. And we did receive an invoice from Butte Silverbow for the Basin Creek Dam. So that category should be a big fat zero now.
What'd you say?
But we did get
Yeah,
an invoice from Butte Silverbow for the Basin Creek Dam.
and
So that category should be at zero now. And it's not receiving any new funds.
unless we move some in there.
Correct. Recreation, you're at 1.3 million, and then small projects doesn't get any payback from the parrot, but you have about $200,000 in there. Total that's left in the pot is about 5.6 million. So I think small projects, the slam dunk. We have 2 projects that were approved. This one is the Bonanza Dump BMX Park. If you remember Bonanza Dump, this is the cloverleaf coming off Iron Street, coming back around to Excelsior. And this is Excel here. And this was a project that was sponsored by the MSU Landscape Architecture Group. And since this was approved, we were waiting for Remedy to decide what they were going to do at the Bonanza Dump. They still haven't made a determination there. And the sponsor of the project, Bradford Watson, is no longer at MSU. So those are, you know, this was approved in 2016, $100,000 has been set aside. Butte Silverbow uses this area on the west end as their snow storage area after they clear the streets. But those are the factors. The other one was the approach coming back onto Excelsior right here. You can't see cars coming north here because the overpass is right in the way. So it's pretty tricky getting in and out of this spot. And they had some real concern with it. So for those reasons, I think it's time to transfer these funds to the Molten and get going on the Molten project and just scratch the BMX park project. And, you know, we weren't building the track. What we were doing was providing additional soils and additional plantings. SARTA did come up with some money for like the start gate and some of maybe it was the timing mechanisms for the track. But this has languished for 8 years, and I think it's just time to put it to bed. And I think we should move the money over to the Molten. This was a project sponsored by Butte Silverbow, and they coordinated with the U.S. Forest Service. It was Julia Crane and Jocelyn Dodge. And they have a plan. It's been approved by the governor. We just need to get with Butte Silverbow and get this under contract. The one thing we were waiting on before we did that, the Basin Creek, the Molten Reservoir Dam, the spillway was washed out, and they just finished a project to redo this spillway, and they put some reinforcement on the front face of the dam, and that project should be complete right now. So that is no longer should be an issue. So I think we can get go on this one and get going, get it under contract, and if Butte Silverbow is the willing sponsor, we can, if we put $200,000 in there. You know, construction costs have gone up since 2015. So 200,000 doesn't buy you twice of what 100,000 would have 10 years ago, but I think we can still do a pretty good job. And I do think that if you put, you know, a big dollar amount as a foundation, that gives Butte Silverbow and the Forest Service opportunities to go out and find match. And, you know, this project was about fishing and fishing access and trails and hiking. And I do think that we could possibly work with FWP to get some future fisheries money. So I think the match opportunities are there for this project. And I think it's a no-brainer to put all 200,000 from small projects into Molten Reservoir. So this is the, yeah, there's a plan. I don't know if you guys know Sean Frederickson. Sean was the commissioner for this district, and now he is the Silverbow Parks and Rec Director. And Sean and I have talked a few times. I think he found the plan on the shelf, and I think I did send you a PDF. And I've also talked with Dave Sherbel, who was basically filled Jocelyn Dodge's spot at the Forest Service. And both parties are embracing this, so.
Would it be good for him to come present to the council again and remind us what this project was? That was a really long time ago.
It really was. And Sean, you've got a request. Do you think you can come talk to us in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I spoke with Dave Sherbel today. He recommends that Butte Silverbow and the Forest Service sit down and really together everyone's thoughts, but
Yeah.
they're willing to talk to Tim Leahy, and you know, we would need to bring in chief executive and our team. Well, I don't want to speak for him, but there is, you know, some agreements that we would have to work out, because it sounds like some of it's Forest Service, some of it's Butte Silverbow, some of it's Forest Service, some of it's Butte Silverbow.
It
What
is.
that agreement would look like.
Yeah.
Was something that we would have to sit down and discuss.
Yeah.
Which we have.
It's very similar to Thompson Park. Yeah, and there's actually a lot of actual private land, and it's like, you can see these mine claims right here, the green dots, those are mine claims. So I do think we do stay away from or off the private, but they are right there as well. You know, another thing, that would be good to consider, and I don't know if. All right, Lisa, what's the trick on this one? For
Pick
that,
up the other one.
is there a laser pointer on here and does it work on? the
It doesn't
software?
on the screen. It
That works.
won't show up on the
So I use
screen.
this one.
Yeah, that one.
Okay. So once you get up to this corner, you kind of walk up the hill, and once you get up to the reservoir, if you do a track almost directly north, it's only about a mile to the Continental Divide Trail. And I think if we can get connection to the Continental Divide Trail, what that will do is when we did it's called the Federal Land Access Planning Grant, flat for short. And we did a flat for, Roosevelt Drive. And it scored really well because that road brings you into access of thousands of acres. Molten didn't score as well because there aren't as many acres to access. But if you can punch that trail up to the Continental Divide Trail, then you are accessing thousands of acres then. So I think if there's a way we can punch it up to Continental Divide, then the next solicitation for flap grants, this should score really well. And I think the county would probably have a good chance of getting a new road up to Molten, so. And Bill?
Yeah, who owns the land for where the trail would go?
I think it's mostly Forest Service. Yeah, there might be some mining claims farther to the north, Bill, but I don't know if you could cut a trail around them or if you'd have to get an easement from the landowner to cross through them. But yeah, but I mean, you know, there's projects like that hopefully we can find match for and really make this a gem for the people of Butte. You know, right now, Joe's with the Nordic Ski Club and the Molten Reservoir area is one of the best in Southwest Montana for cross-country skiing. So, and those folks, basically, part of this project would be to make a parking area down here below the dam. And that's about where all the cross-country skiers park also. So it could be year round. Mary Jo, grab a beer and some pizza. And
I think it'd be good to get an update that, you know, the Forest Service and Butte Silver Bow want to do and with some cost estimates and, you know, because this has just been such. a long
yeah,
time ago.
it's dusty,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so before we do anything, we need.
Yeah,
know
yeah, and
what it
tonight
is.
we're not
Yeah.
looking for action. I'm just giving you thoughts,
Perfect.
stuff that you can consider.
Can we go back to that BMX thing?
Yes, sir.
I'd like to see something done there eventually,
Yeah,
but I guess what's stopping us from doing anything would be the remedy issue.
remedy's not known yet, you know.
And
Yeah.
we pushed on this right when the CD came out and you just.
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't want to get you off on a rabbit trail, but during CD negotiations, you know, at the beginning, the unreclaimed and the under-reclaimed areas, which this was one of, if you remember in the Butte Area One Restoration Plan, we had reserved, NRD reserved $2 million to do work on these sites. But it was pushed back on a remedy to address these sites. And so so that $2 million actually went back towards the parrot. So it is in their camp and we're just waiting. And they are picking them off one by one, but I don't know where this is in the queue, but
Is it even
They are.
in the queue?
yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep. And you know, West Elementary's like right there.
Right,
And what the kids do and how Bradford got the idea for a bike park, is all the neighborhood kids ride their bikes here because there's lots of little bunny hills and it's
yes,
fun.
line dumps,
Yeah, line dumps and
they ride their bikes there now, so something of value recreation wise.
yeah. And you know, one of the other, actually, when we did the public solicitation and you got the 100 even restoration ideas, one of them was Phyllis from the Bureau of Mines wanted to put a dog park here. So, yeah, and we didn't sue for dog parks, but you know, we really didn't sue for bike parks either. So
Right.
I'm sure we could have worked with something, but that idea just didn't get off the drawing board. Yeah, I mean, it is Butte Silver Bow property. It's almost, I think it's 6+ acres. So it's a pretty big spot. So yeah, you know, it could be an enjoyable open space for public use. You know, in the winter, that is, you know, snow storage. So
Which it still could be, I mean, just. but
yeah.
The whole area needs to be cleaned up.
Yep. So they are looking at it and you know, there are some nice trees along Excelsior right there. And actually there is a water feature here. I've seen it on old maps called Rhubarb Gulch, but there is water in that channel. I think it's a pretty small trickle, but it is year round.
Yeah,
And that channel is lined with slag bricks. So, yeah. But anything else?
no, it's just,
Yeah, I don't know, Sean, is there anything on your radar for this?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. You know, if this was ever to be completed, it would be considered a park, so I would kind of worry about adding more parks to a park system that's already
Yeah,
large. We have 56 parks right now, and that's not even counting Thompson Park, which the Forest Service maintains, we pay into that. So I do have some of those concerns. The other concern, and I was on STARTA when I was a commissioner, ex officio, so I didn't have a vote, but so I'm aware of this project. We don't really have the person that came to present this no longer lives in Montana. And so I also have concerns about who's really gonna champion it. I don't know if my department could really take something like that on.
Yeah, I'm not saying it needs to be a bike park, but something.
Yeah, I mean, when it becomes open space, it's gonna
Yeah.
fall in.
And it is right off of the interstate exit. I mean, it's it's that corridor in the Butte and
Right.
nice to clean it up and make it look nice.
Yeah, and if you do
Sure.
remember, right across the street here, there's a nice green area that we did do tree pods under the tree
Right.
project. It was one of the first ones we did, and some of those trees still look great.
Yeah, that's a nice area.
I think this is another one of those examples of, where we're waiting on remedy to finish before we can do anything. And, one of the things that we've said all along is that by the time remedies gets done, our restoration needs are gonna be gone.
Yeah.
And so, I mean,
Yeah. Okay,
That's-
yeah, I just wanted to go back a minute.
That might be a great place for, somebody teaming up with Robert Powell's program and just getting, some trees in there and stuff, really. I mean, it's kind of got some problems for kids because the only access is Excel.
Yeah.
People are barreling along Excel right there. But it is a nice area. People use it right now as a dog park.
Right.
A lot. It'd make a good dog park, actually, an informal
That's
dog park.
there's always people out there to go.
An informal dog park, dog sleep park.
Yeah.
We already got dogs running all over that.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
I'm just joking.
Okay, the next area I wanted, or category I wanted to look at is the mine waste area, or, it's basically the re-veg. And there's nearly $2 million in this category. The pros of the programs that we've worked with in the re-veg project is, you improve diversity and sustainability of the covers on the mine dumps. And that was the goal, and it's tied back to the water quality in Silverbow Creek. And, the one thing I can say about both Silverbow County and Tech is that each year they're getting better at this. What we're doing now is much better than what we did 10 years ago. And I commend them on, being good stewards of the restoration dollars. And they have looked for opportunities to work with Remedy. And right now, kind of the way they're approaching this is every year they inspect 1/4 of the freeze is the Butte reclamation evaluation system. So it's basically the inspection of the caps. So each year that the hill is divided into quadrants, and each year they inspect all the caps in one quadrant. And then they find out what the deficiencies are in some of them. And they say, okay, Remedy's gotta fix this, but let's use the restoration dollars to go above and beyond what Remedy has to do. And that's the way we've been approaching this for the last several years. So Remedy is doing a big lift on these sites, and restoration's coming in with, the frosting on the cake. And it's worked pretty well. But, and I think it's kind of one of our criticisms is a lot of what they do is difficult for our untrained eye to see, because it just looks like a grassy cap still, but now we've got forbs and shrubs in there and some woodies, but it still looks like a sea of restoration grass for a large part of it. And again, it's a slow process. So I think those are kind of the criticisms we've all had of this revegetation effort. So I think what we need to do is we've got contracts with Butte Silverbow and with Montana Tech, and they both go through till the end of 28. I think we need to honor those contracts. But I do, like John, you've always said, is look for opportunities to do something big like Norm did at the Stewart. And I think those opportunities are out there. And this is getting back to those under reclaimed and insufficiently reclaimed areas, and the Bonanza dump could be one of them. But I think to do something big on some of those areas and put a big investment in a few instead of a small investment in many. And I think that's kind of what you were looking for, right, John? Or,
Maybe.
yeah, okay.
Yes.
So if we honor the existing contracts through 2028, is that the whole 140?
No, there's 1.88 in the category, but I think the value of the existing contracts we're in, I think it's closer to $500,000. So, you know, there's money siloed into that category dedicated to Butte Silver Bowl that's not under contract. And the same thing with tech. There's money earmarked for them, but it's not currently under contract. So, and the other thing that I really think is powerful is the community plantings. I know it takes a lot of work for Butte Silver Bowl and Montana Tech to tee these up. But anytime you get like 50 people out on the hill, helping putting plants and trees on the hill, then they have ownership of it. And I think we need to do more of that, particularly with grade school kids, because they're going to be able to see a tree planted here when they're in second grade. By the time they're out of high school, it could be a big tree. And then they can tell their children, hey, I planted that tree. I think we need to look for more opportunities to do some big plantings and get in the grade schools and get after it too. So that's my thoughts on the re-veg. You guys have any questions on that before we go over stream restoration?
Pat, this is Robert Powell.
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, hi, Robert.
Is it? Hello. Sorry that I'm not there in person, but do you see? I have shared a picture, and I'm not sure if the system lets it through. It's just kind of a class picture 2-3 weeks ago when it was nicer weather at one of our sites from 2016 plantings, and you said they're not really visible. But look at this picture, without any watering, anything input. I don't know if you see it because it says I'm
Yeah, it's on
sharing
our
it.
laptop and we can. It's small, but it's not on the smart board.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's just a couple of hundred trees out there, and now they're visible. They're getting up to your waist or maybe even higher. These are limber, lodgepole, and duck fir trees out south of Butte. Anyway, I just wanted to.
Would he have to stop sharing the screen to
Okay.
have that one come through?
All right.
James,
How is
let
that?
us-
Okay.
I did stop.
We're gonna see if
Sorry.
we can move it to the big screen. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Everybody, this is Lisa Carey. She's the Director of Emergency Services for Butte Silver Bowl, and we're having an emergency right now. So
That's pretty scary. Okay, let's see here. Oh no, you're not sharing. Oh, it's the other computer that's sharing it. The gentleman somewhere.
Doug?
I think you would have to do it, Doug. I think you would have to switch it around to share the other screen.
That's okay. If it's a problem, then
Robert,
Yeah,
can you
I don't have
email me
Robert's
the-
picture though.
Okay.
I don't know where it
Uh,
went on here.
yeah, I stopped sharing it, but I can share it again.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Would you
just
like me
email
to?
it out to us. I'd like to see it.
They said yes.
I
Robert,
will-
can you email it to me and I will share it with the council?
Okay.
Thank you.
Just right. I will do it. So
Okay,
if you
thanks.
can do it anyway.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Where'd the emergency go?
Is it not working now?
You
No,
have an adjourned.
Doug, you still see the
presentation.
presentation, correct?
No, the presentation isn't being shared anymore. I just see you guys.
Okay.
How about now, Doug?
Yep, now you're sharing it.
Okay.
You got the community planting up.
Shows at the top of the screen.
Okay, now see if that works, Pat. Is that working?
Yeah. I can stop sharing.
No, don't do that.
Okay. That's us.
I think this is. Um, hmm.
So.
What's that?
Here we go. Thanks, Jim. The next category that I wanted to talk about is stream restoration, and there's approximately $2 million in this category. And you guys know about the projects here. Grove Gulch is the stream that runs along the trail road. And it goes back up to the Girl Scout camp that's way up there. And it used to run to the west of Mount Moriah Cemetery and then join Silver Goat Creek through the Montana pole plant site. So historically, it would have been Butte reduction works on the east of Grove Gulch and the Colorado smelter on the west side of Grove Gulch. But it was rerouted to go around Mount Moriah Cemetery after the 1908 flood because it unearthed a bunch of graves through there. So this project would be to take it out of the existing route that goes under Copper Mountain Park. And it goes underneath Montana Street. It goes through some private land, and then it goes through a trailer court. Goes under Lexington Avenue and then Dog Lakes north and joins Blacktail Creek there at Lexington Avenue.
Hey, Pat, what are they doing there now?
That project is to put a stormwater retention basin there, and that's what they're putting in right now. Yeah, so the pros of moving Grove Gulch back into its original channel would be to improve connectivity to Silverbow Creek, because you're not going through that. It's probably a 2-mile course maybe, and underneath Copper Mountain Park. And it would deliver more flow into Silverbow Creek. And that's one of our goals, is to get more flow to all the main stems, and it's a challenge. The cons is this project is probably greater than a $2 million project. That's, you know, if to put it in context, to look at what DEQ is doing on the Blacktail Creek berm. And I know they have waste removals to do, but that's maybe 2/3 of a mile or even half a mile. And we penciled it in as a $6 million project. So I'm pretty certain this would be greater than $2 million. And to coordinate with,
Private property does go with.
there's 2 different parcels. One is owned by Hollow, and we've had preliminary discussions with them, and they were willing to work with us. And then there's another private party that is new to me, but the prior person that owned that land, I had talked to him before and they were willing, but it's a new landowner that I haven't talked to yet, and runs right through the middle of their property, so.
And so how much of it runs through private property?
Probably nearly half of the distance is private. And then at the end, it goes through the Montana pole plant site, so we have to coordinate with DEQ on that. And that chunk that goes through, like this right here, is all out in front of the county shops. And you can see this is the private parcel. And then once you get to the trees, that's Mount Moriah, so you kind of jog to the north and go with just a west.
Flow year round.
You know what typically does, Emmett? I was out there not too long ago and this is upstream, so if you were right where it goes under Beef Trail Road, you're kind of by the it's just a little bit up the road from Copper Mountain Park entrance. But it's just wet. There's not much flow in there right now, but if you go out there in spring, you know, I think it's typically 3 CFS, cubic feet per second. So it's decent. It's not a lot, but any flow helps.
Are there contamination issues on any of those properties that it's?
You know, this yard is, sand and gravel. You know, we have to do, an EA. And Hollow's property, it skirts their operation, but it would be right along the old, Chicago, Milwaukee, St. Paul rail bed. So,
Is going through the coal plant feasible?
yeah, you know, Doug is online. He has, talked with DEQ about it and they they like the idea. Yeah, but again, you know, the cons are this is a bigger project than we have money for. And so you know, to do the FEMA process and how FEMA works is you have to go in and evaluate what effect this project is gonna have on the floodplain. And man, what did it take for a blacktail, Jim? Was it 2 years?
2 years, yeah, 2 years
Yeah,
and
and-
probably got $100,000, $80,000.
Yeah, so it's not cheap. And that's just permits.
For one permit.
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't look like big bang for your buck there.
yeah. So I would say, you know, we looked at this project from the get-go. And if you remember when we did the LiDAR survey, reviewed area one, we did most of Grove Gulch as well with this in mind. So, I like it, still like it, but we don't have enough money to do it. So I think it goes to the bottom of the list. Joe Griffin has a question.
Well, no, I don't have a question, Ed. Well, maybe it's a question. That whole area is considered uncontrolled runoff area that's gonna be addressed under remedy as well. I'm curious, I mean, could this work really remedy with restoration?
Yeah, I think there's that potential, Joe. I still like the project, but by ourselves, we don't have enough funds to do it, and it's just not enough bang for the buck.
Well, and
So,
truthfully, in my mind, it's remedy. I mean, you're removing that water from going through waste material.
Yeah.
They're trying to treat it already, so it's a remedy project.
yeah,
I don't know.
so,
And that's coming out on the west side of the landfill area, right?
landfill.
Yeah, the old landfill.
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yeah, yeah. So you know where the driving range is?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's just west of that.
Yep.
Right.
Sean, what's it cost you to bucket of balls there now?
Well, the machine's been broken for a year, so it's free. You just gotta go pick them up yourself.
Thanks, Sean. The other big project in this category, we talked about it quite a bit last time, and it's the Blacktail Creek Stream Restoration Project. I mean, this is a great project. It improves the Blacktail Creek habitat and water quality. But kind of the drawbacks are, you know, from Harrison to Lexington is twice as far as it is from Lexington to Montana Street. And if that section is $6 million, this section could be 12. I mean, just I don't think it would be, but just using that as our yardstick, and we've only got 2. And some of the other unknowns, you know, the Bell smelter was there right by Ace Hardware. That is in west side soils. I don't know the timeline for west side soils. They haven't even completed the remedial investigation yet. So it's slow. Remedy's slow here. If you guys remember, before it was called the west side soils, there was Butte priority soils, which is the applicable unit they're working with now. And the area outside of that was called non-priority soils, which I think is a pretty accurate label, but they changed it to west side soils. But the Bell smelter is east of Butte priority soils. So again, permitting is probably a year, at least 100,000. So this is a worthy project, but I really think that we should follow through with doing an investigation. You know, we did some sampling between Lexington and Harrison. And I do think, you know, our previous investigations have benefited in that we got better remedies because of restoration investigations. So I do think it would be worth our time and effort to dedicate some money. It's probably in that $200,000 range to do a thorough investigation from Lexington to Harrison. And we could get going on that next week if we want to make it an action item for you guys to make recommendations. But I do think we need to do that. We need to do the investigation and see if this is a good use of the money, see what's there. Because the Bell smelter was a source area and it never, I mean, there were actions there to make it buildable, but it wasn't a true cleanup. So I think we need to characterize it, the nature and extent of the contamination there. Second thing about Blacktail Creek is, and John, you alluded to it, where is that line? And, you know, we kind of just drew it at Harrison because we said upstream of Harrison that the aquatics money from the Upper Clark Fork River Basin settlement would take care of that. We do have a project there right now. It's, basically there's a Butte Silver Bow sewer line that runs through the creek. Initially, it was below the creek and it was encased in concrete. But over the years, the stream bed was eroded and now the stream goes right over that line. And so it's a fish barrier. Fish can't get up and over that encased line. It's like a dam, basically. So that's a fish passage impediment. So we've got a project to take care of that and to make step pulls up and over that. And the other part of that project is the Butte Country Club has their irrigation pond. That's brook trout habitat. And what we wanted to do was it's just got basically a ditch to take water out of the creek and into the pond and then back to the creek. We wanted to take the pond offline and put fish screen so that fish couldn't get in and out of that pond, because that's, again, that's brookie habitat. Not that there's anything wrong with brook trout, they taste great. But that project is basically already permitted. Jim did all the work on getting that under a conditional letter of map revision. That's a CLOMAR with FEMA. And the reason we grouped them together is because you only have to do one permit that way. Even though these are on separate properties, it's still within one big area. And right now, you know, this upfront work left us short of the money to complete that project. And I think it is viable to use money from Butte Area One to complete this, project that the Butte sewer line and the country club pond. The reason I think that is because until you take care of these, when we did the Blacktail Creek assessment, we went from the confluence with Silverbow Creek all the way up to the Highlands. The highest ranking project were the culverts that ran underneath Roosevelt Drive. There's like 8 of them, and they're basically perched. So when they come under the road, the water comes through the pipes up here and the creek's down here. So the water drops down into the creek, so fish can't get back up into that pipe and go upstream to the spawning habitat. That was our highest priority project. The FLAP grant, that Federal Land Access Planning Grant for Roosevelt Drive, is gonna address all those. And that was like $1 million. So then we went to the next highest priority, and that was a similar deal to the Butte country, or the Butte sewer line. The Butte Country Club irrigation pond. There's an irrigation ditch right where Highway 2 and Continental Drive come together. There's a family that hays that area, and they have a ditch and a water right to take water out of Blacktail and use it to irrigate their field. Basically the same story. They had tarps and logs in the creek to divert water into their ditch, and that project we did for, it was under 100,000. But when you added on all the permits and everything, it was a couple $100,000. So if you ever want to go out and see that, it's called the Red Fern Diversion. And it's right there where Highway 2 and Harrison, or not Harrison, but Continental come together. That was our second highest priority. This project was our third highest priority. And the one thing about that area is, if we don't take care of these things, that creek through there is going to keep cutting down because it can't access the floodplain. And so it takes that load and it dumps it out downstream, right where we want to do this work here. So until we take care of this problem, it's hard to take care of this. So I think funding the Butte Silverbow sewer line project and the country club irrigation pond diversion is worthy of consideration for Butte Area 1 funds. I think what's the total price on the project, Jim?
The total price, I think it's like 1.1. We are looking at other funding sources, so we submitted an application for match funds, 319 funds from DEQ. So that's for non-point source pollution for all this sediment that's coming out and this geomorphically unstable. If you want to think about the golf course and the sewer line, it's just geomorphically unstable, right? And so we applied for that last Friday. Next Friday, we have an application going in for a futures fisheries grant for all the fish benefits out of this. We've asked for money from the Bonneville Power Administration. They have money for fish screens. So that would be for the fish screen component of it. And then there's one new grant that we just found from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I can't, they all have these names like future fisheries or whatever, but it's a fish-based grant and it seems like that might be a fit. So we're chasing a bunch of other match money. Right now, we're 360 in the hole, but depending on how these applications come out, that could go down. It could be all addressed with these other additional match funds.
So then the bulk of the 1.1 is coming from Upper Clarkburg?
Correct.
Yeah, it's all come from waters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've got it from Lexington to Montana Street. I mean,
That's
but you should know.
that's the DEQ remedy project.
Yeah, so that's DQ remedy. And then when Pat was talking about from Lexington on up here, it's all part of West Side Soils. Now, the thing is, so like Pat mentioned, we did all that sampling, remember, down in Blacktail Creek and down the confluence, BRW, all that stuff. up here was our sort of like our upstream background. It's not really background, but upstream samples. So there was probably like 16, 18 sample points up here, and stream sediments, some sediment pore water, overbank stuff. And they have varying degrees of contamination. You know, it's not as contaminated as the BRW, but it's not anywhere near background. Now, we all know that the water that flows into BIPSU is already well over the standards. That's why they got waivers in BIPSU. That's why BP got waivers. It's over the standards. The water in here in spring runoff is over the standards. And so some of that's coming from stormwater. There's some stormwater inputs right down here. Some of it's probably the fine grain in stream sediments. And so, you know, that first option, you know, it's a lot of money to actually deal with this, but one of the concepts we had was trying to team up with EPA and BP. Like we all know this is a problem for everybody, right? It's a problem for the projects downstream. If they get cleaned up and this contaminated sediment flows down, they've got a problem. So trying to work together. But again, until we really know exactly what the existing conditions are up here, it's hard to really, you know, it'd be hard to quantify anything.
Yeah, and I guess this isn't our only bite at the apple. Because when Remedy DEQ is done with the Blacktail Creek burn, you remember there was a $20.5 million settlement called the Butte site account. And what DEQ doesn't use to do the Blacktail Creek burn, which our estimate in 2018 dollars was $6 million. So it's probably more than that now, but we believe, you know, a good chunk of that 20.5 should come back. And that money goes back. There's $1 million set aside for Butte Silver Bow to do basically the Restore a Creek option. And then the other funds go back to those that were the money came from for the parrot. So it's basically to repay the parrot. So this category, once DEQ's finished, will receive more funding, but it's not going to be anytime soon. It's probably, best case, it's 3 or 4 years, likely 5 or 6. So I think we don't want to wait for that, but I think we can't forget about it. So this is something to do right now, characterize this stretch, and then build a gap for the upstream project that is worthy, that ranked higher than this project actually. So that's what I would do with stream restoration right now.
So is there any, any updates on those stream side leftovers?
I haven't talked with DEQ. We should get them here to give us an update on the Blacktail Creek burn and the SSTOU remainders. Doug, make a note. We'll get DEQ here to talk to us in the near future. And they're willing to do that.
No, Pat, DEQ has committed to come. So that's not a problem. It's just a matter of, this wasn't the meeting.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Oops. So the other project that I believe fits stream restoration is actually in the Parrot area to capture the groundwater there and send it back to Montana Resources. So as you guys know, the Parrot project was first to remove that source of contamination, which ended up being how many yards of material, Jim? 1,000, or excuse me, 1 million, close to?
Of waste materials?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little less than that.
Yeah, so the one thing,
This is in the category.
this is stream restoration still. Yep. So why this would fit with stream restoration is because part of stream restoration is to protect water quality. And as you guys know, the alluvial groundwater reports to Silver Bow Creek. So I think if we could clean it up here at the Parrot, that protects Silver Bow and Blacktail Creek. Let's see, so during the Parrot project, that area had to be dewatered for construction to keep the work area dry. And during that effort, they basically put in a French drain system and connected it all up and pumped it over, it through a double lined pipe over to Montana Resources emergency pond. So they moved about 32 million gallons during construction. And just by doing the mass balance of the flow rate versus the concentration of zinc and copper in that water, this effort removed over 35,000 pounds of copper and 37,000 pounds of zinc from the aquifer. So I think if we could continue this effort, it's gonna accelerate the recovery of the aquifer and at the same time protect the creek from any contaminated groundwater from reporting to the creek. And I think this is a very proactive project that we can get going on now while DEQ finishes Blacktail Creek. And then when Blacktail Creek is finished, we'll get that money coming back and we can do that project from Lexington to Harrison. But if you don't want to wait, this is the best bang for your buck.
And the money would be spent on the pumps?
Yeah, John, typically to do a project like this, you'd have to drill a couple wells.
Do you have that slide? And the infrastructure that was used for the pre-construction dewatering has all been removed?
Nope, it's still in place and that would be part of the system as well.
So what would you need in addition to that?
So we had a figure and I think we did some presentations, I think before you were on this council. So we modeled it because we had meetings with BP about this, about working together on this. Because there's joint benefits here. And so I think we did some initial modeling. It was about 4 additional wells. So we've got this drain system. I'm sorry, we don't have a figure of it. The existing drain system, that all has manholes in the parking lots. And then that would be combined with 4 wells that would be manifolded and then all pumped up to MR's process pond.
So the original system was just designed for construction dewatering.
That's right. It wasn't designed to capture, to keep the contaminated groundwater from leaving the site.
Right.
It was just used to dry out the waste enough to pull the waste out.
So you need some wells to go deeper and as you pull that groundwater down.
Yeah. And we have talked preliminary with Montana Resources and for the community, they would do this.
So the money would be spent drilling wells and pumping the water.
Correct.
Yeah, building a pipeline. Pumping.
And during construction, John, that pipe was just laid on top of the ground. But if we do this project, we bury a little frost line so you could do it year round.
But we are not still pumping.
No, that was just during
The
construction.
project.
Yeah.
used to put pump.
Yeah. And I mean, that speaks for itself. I mean, that's how.
I think it speaks for itself. What's this current recharge rate? You guys have probes there. What's the recharge rate?
Well, John, if you remember when we talked about, how long it would take for a drop of water to get from the Parrot down to the creek. It was, I think EPA had estimated it was like 120 years, but after we did that 2010 aquifer test or pumping test, the Bureau of Mines figured it was more like 3 years.
Right,
Yeah.
and then we pulled out the tailings, and now we have our own sensors and monitoring there. What's the sensors and monitoring saying now? Not 2010.
To keep what you're talking about, to have like a corner depression, to keep water from leaving the site.
Sure.
Yeah, it would be less than 200 gallons a minute. Is what our estimate.
Oh, I thought you meant the water to
Yeah.
travel that distance. I get what you're saying. Yeah, I think we had always estimated it was about 100 gallons a minute.
Yeah, that was our agreement, previously with MR for the construction stuff, that we wouldn't exceed 100 gallons a minute. But again, even at 200 gallons a minute, Mark Thompson said that, that for them, they deal in large volumes of water. That would be nothing. They'd be willing to take it for the community. Is the exact quote.
And their circuit, I think, is about 11 million gallons a day, but it's a closed loop, so none of that water leaves the property. So to add 100 gallons a minute to an 11 million gallon a day system, It's the proverbial drop in the bucket.
And Turgout's a minute's about 30 cents a minute to power cost on a municipal volumes.
So, you said this does have some implications on remedy, I think was the word used. Is there any chance of cost sharing as this does have some implications on making some?
Well, yeah, Elizabeth, we had a couple, I think 3 separate meetings with BP over the last 3 or 4 years about this concept, and we did the modeling, and did some cost estimates so that 2 million is not just a swag. I mean, we had, filled out spreadsheets, figured out what real costs were. There seemed to be like they never said no, they still haven't said no, but they don't say yes, and they've got a lot of other projects going. We have, I think Doug recently heard that they think their system is operating fine or whatever that means. So I don't know.
The LAO system?
Well, I think they're talking more about the subdrain system.
Oh, the subdrain system. Okay.
Yeah, and they have plans. They built a big numeric model. We do actually get invited to that meeting on the groundwater model. But again, it's clear that they're years and years away from even deciding what they might do, and then however long that takes to construct. They obviously get benefits from this because this is the water that fouls that subdrain. Water at the parent is what fouls, and so they know it, and they acknowledge that. They don't beat around the bush with that. They know that there's direct benefits to them when this water is being captured.
But if we did this right now, it's more than likely that we would be doing it on our own.
Probably. I mean, if this was something that you guys thought should be taken forward, I mean, we'd make it like a real ask, like in writing, and want a real response. And again, like I said, they've never really said outwardly no. It's just that they've got, they're still trying to find a repository. They've got, a new lead standard. They've got all these other things. But if it was something they were just signing a check, maybe they would, and we were doing all the work.
How long would it take to do the work? How big a project is that?
4 wells, manifolding, pump house, running the electrical up there, so we're relying on Northwest Energy. Right, we had a temporary board, so this is the sump to the existing system. But burying a pipe like over the mark, you could probably do that in, a season.
I wouldn't think it'd be.
No, I mean, you have to line things up, you have to line your driller and stuff, but no, it's not like hauling waste or something where it's just this big, long involved process. I mean, there's a number of design steps. I think the biggest uncertainty is the coordination with BP and EPA. And what that might be like, because there would need to be some coordination.
Yeah, and 2 with the landowner, Butte Silver Bow, and with Montana Resources as well.
Yeah.
And what's how long you got a pump?
Till the money's gone.
What? Where would this pipeline be? Where would the 4 wells be?
So the wells probably, John, along, if you look at the flow of the aquifer, it's basically parallel to the old Silver Bowl Creek channel. So the wells would probably be somewhere in the Civic Center parking lot area. And then the line would probably go on the west side of the channel. Probably sneaks in underneath Texas Avenue, right over by the elevated rail tracks, and then into Montana Resources emergency pond right there.
Yeah, probably not a lot different than where the line was before.
Yeah, it was just on top of the ground, and that line, you remember, went down into the channel, and we used the existing culvert to take it underneath Texas Avenue and get it into the pond. So
So in other
that
words, the
same-
existing improvements in the Parrot project, the surface improvements would be touched.
Correct. We drill a well, I mean, you'd have something like this.
Or you would have walls or
Yeah.
put them
Flush.
outside of any areas. So John, we have we have a figure that locates this, shows the cone of capture for each well was all calculated. It's not like, it's not a cartoon, it's, you know, a next step on a concept. And we can, if you wanted to, next time we get together, we can give more of that presentation of the details, give the details of the estimate of costs, you know, how long you would run it, that gets to, you know, how long you have these really high, super high concentrations, right? At some point, the concentrations you'd expect to fall off. We never saw that with our dewatering, surprisingly. At some point, you fall off, but can I really predict, is that gonna be 5 years or 7 years? I don't know. We don't really know, but at some asymptotic point, you would wanna say like, you know, we're not capturing very high concentrations anymore. It's not worth the electrical costs or the maintenance costs or whatever. And then you'd shut it off. But we wouldn't expect it. It's not a forever thing. If it was a forever thing, we would have just left all the waste in place and just captured the contaminated water.
But you made a business decision not to include a groundwater capture system in the original design of the Parrot project. You know, you guys did all the research that you did and the investigation and your design work, and it seems counterintuitive to me that now we would pose it as a project when you didn't include it when you were designing the best possible Parrot tailings cleanup project. And so it just seems to me it's something that can wait until the rest of the groundwater improvements are made, the surface water improvements, the stormwater improvements in the courts. We begin to collect the data relative to how things have improved. And if we're still facing a challenge where this could make a significant difference, I think it's a perfect candidate for the surplus money on the 20.5 million once this Blacktail Confluence project is done. And that's done by DEQ, and the DEQ with NRD says we can do better. Let's use some of that money to get the money out of the ecosystem before it comes downstream. That seems to me to be the right sequence, rather than doing it now with the precious dollars we have available, rather than leaning on these surplus dollars that should be made available to specialty projects in the corridor.
Yeah, so part of the angst I sense from you guys, what can we work? Appreciate that. Yeah, and I think really once you see stuff like this.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think made it a higher priority than before when we did the removal action. But I think seeing those results, in my mind, made this a higher priority.
And the Parrot project was never a groundwater project. It was a waste removal project. We always talked about that.
Yeah.
So the only reason this was done was just to dewater so we could get to the waste. So it's kind of, you know, apples and oranges. One of the things that we found when we did dewater to remove the waste was that there was a whole lot of metals coming out of there. And if you get them up here, they're not moving downstream. It makes it a hell of a lot easier if you get it at the source than if you try to chase it down the drainage.
I find it a little bit specious that you're calling the Parrot tailings a removal project that has nothing to do with groundwater.
That's not what I said. I
What
said
did
it
you
was
say?
a waste removal project. It was not a groundwater project. It was a waste removal project to improve, to remove the source of the contamination to the groundwater.
Yeah. So I'm getting this out on the table. And I hear you. I mean, timing is everything, and those are the decisions that we have to make. So, Bill,
So I'm wondering, like John's saying, if we were to wait on this, but what's in my head is I'm wondering, number one, how long would we have to wait if we did choose to do that? And I think what's even more important than that is how much more, like Elizabeth was saying, is how much more of the copper and the zinc are gonna end up in the groundwater going down. I mean, you know, do we know how much, say on a yearly basis, if we put this thing off, how much more is gonna end up going into the creek? Now that we've delineated that it takes 3 years for this water to move from point A to point B. I mean, you know,
Well, we know, Bill, that, about half, we estimate about half the contaminated groundwater that leaves the pair ends up in the subdrain. About half of it, and half of it doesn't. Now, there's a lot of strange geochemistry that goes on, so I'm not saying that all goes in the creek.
right?
Partitions on soils, it absorbs the soils, it desorbs from soils, there's a lot of stuff going on. But half of it's leaving the parent. I think the real sort of question is about these how high the concentrations came up, and this gets sort of to a separate but connected issue about the monitoring that we are doing for it. You know, it's very expensive monitoring. We all know we have that liability. The state has that liability in the CD, 8 pages of liability. But we cut that back because we're trying to conserve dollars for other projects. And so we have a good data set, I think, to protect ourselves and to understand the system, but we don't have like current data. We're not monitoring water levels or chemistry or any of that. Right now, we're sort of reliant on what BP's monitoring, and they've got a fairly robust plan. Doesn't include any of our wells that were critical that we put in as part of the project. But we could do some calculations and figure it out, but how long until the groundwater's gotten to? I mean, you know, those attachment C for the CD was released in February of 2018. So, you know, we're going on whatever that is, 7 years. And so I don't know, could it be another 7 years? I certainly could be longer than that. I don't know.
So remember the Bureau of Mines did some, studies, they were looking at some leach testing. And I don't remember what their estimate, I remember it was like 3
Yeah,
port
I think it was
volumes or something.
3.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they didn't, and it was like 7 years? Is that right? I don't know.
That's
It's been a while ago.
kind of what I remember also. Yeah, I can dig those up.
I mean, we didn't, you know, I think we gave you this presentation on this concept a couple of years ago when we were talking with BP, but we didn't take it forward, you know, it wasn't going anywhere with BP. We sort of just sat it down like, we think this is a good idea. We thought it was something we could work together with them on and combine resources, right, for the benefit of the resource. But we could do some back of the envelope calculations and make assumptions about, well, how much is leaving here if you waited 5 years or 7 years or 10 years? I don't know. You know, we could do some of that without spending a bunch of time on it. Again, I think what Pat was presenting here, because we had this before, was this is just something that's out there. Do we know? It should be something remedy. It's not the state of Montana's contaminated groundwater. That's not our groundwater. But let's make that clear. This is a whole separate project than the Parrot. The Parrot tailings waste removal project was a waste removal project, as Elizabeth said. This is capturing contaminated groundwater for the purpose of contaminated groundwater. So we see from a liability perspective, paragraph 26 doesn't apply to this project. There's no liability. This is something separate, and we're not using that leftover that leftover Blacktail Creek money. So the way the CD is written is, whatever we use that money, that leftover money on, if it negatively impacts remedy, the state can be sued. So whenever that money's ready, available, I don't know when that is, but it's gonna have to be scrutinized how it's used. Because it could trigger that liability provisions in the CD. We see this as something entirely different, not utilizing that money, so there's no liability associated with it. But we want to make sure that everybody else sees it the same way.
Yeah. So, and I guess just getting back to timing. So the 2 million that's there. We can't complete this project with that 2 million. But if you spent the $2 million here, we can get going on it now. And you can keep running this until the 2 million's gone. By then, maybe there's the money that comes back from remedy once DEQ is finished, and you can keep running this. But 2 million isn't enough to do this job. That's why I like this option. So just think about it. This is not a decision meeting. This is information for you guys to consider.
Pat, what kind of concentrations in the what are we talking about?
I haven't seen the last numbers from the PFP samples, Jim. Do you offhand remember?
I mean, we had concentrations up like 180,000, say for zinc, 190,000.
Almost 2%.
I mean, the water's blue and green.
Maybe 20%.
Yeah, it's.
Divided by 10,000.
It is, higher concentrations than what you see in the Berkeley pit, higher concentrations at BRW. And BRW has some bad groundwater. I mean, this is, I mean, East Helena has worse arsenic groundwater, but I haven't seen groundwater in Montana that has these sorts of concentrations. And again, I'm not trying to sell the project or not. Don't take it like that. I'm just giving you information.
Well, I mean, my favorite part is if we can get Montana Resources involved, they're always looking for water. They're alarming. And they got water with copper in it. You recover that in their precip.
Precip, yeah.
And then they can use it however they want to.
All right, should we go to the next category?
Yes.
How are we doing on time, you guys?
7:30.
Okay.
How are we doing on time, Pat?
We're almost there.
Okay.
The restoration of Upper Silverbow Creek corridor, and this was the waste removal project for the Parrot. We're getting about $250,000 back once the Parrot remainders get distributed. And waste removal, that was our Parrot project, and doing waste removal down corridor provides the same benefit. You're removing that source of contamination. So that is what it's all about. But the comments about this is, we're still waiting on remedy decisions, As has been pointed out earlier, there's still no repository. And the other thing about it is $250,000 doesn't get you a lot of work these days. So what I think a good use for this money that you can do now is to do a Parrot smelter, kind of a kiosk there in the corner of the existing parking lot, and it will just tell about the Parrot smelter, what was on that site 100 years ago, and what we did to clean it up. That's not a big dollar item. Swagging it, it's probably $10,000-ish, maybe 20,000. I haven't put a pencil to it yet, but I think you can do a nice kiosk for that price. We also, when we did the Parrot project, you remember those big slag ingots that were in the pile? We saved a few dozen of those. My thought was to bring them back here to do this to put those slag ingots on display with the,
With a liner underneath it.
all right.
Sorry, just saying.
Count. No. The other thing that, we've done a lot of work on the parrot and we really haven't documented that. And I don't mean to pat that. I do think for posterity, we should be writing some technical papers about this project and what detailed, what the results were. Because in the future, it might not be us, but somebody's gonna have to make decisions about a removal action. And I think if we document the parrot in an objective way, peer reviewed papers, I think it's very important to get on the record. And I don't think that is a very large ticket item either, but I do think using the funds to do these two tasks is important. And then I would anticipate there'd be a pretty good chunk left over, and then that could be transferred to another category where we have a gap to fill for some project funding. So, by the way, these are just from the diggings east. This is that trench that we dug from. It's Baker Auto's storage yard, and we dug a trench all the way up to George Street, and it was all tailings. And groundwater was only about 4 or 5-ish feet right there, but everything above the groundwater was tailings. These are more pictures of the, we just went in with a backhoe and dug holes. And you can see the tailings in that lens, and you can see the debris above it. But that's what I do with that 250 is do those two tasks and then put the money back into the category where we have a shortfall. So the last category is recreation. There's basically $1.3 million in that category. Pretty much has been untouched from the beginning. You remember the original 28 grew to 32. You guys set aside 1 million for recreation. And I think this is the project. It's the Basin Creek Reservoir Recreation Project. And then you made this point early on when we were asked to put $10 million towards water infrastructure, is that even in your guiding document, it says we want to make Silverbow Creek all it can be. And if we took that 10 million, we could have done more with it for the creek. And what you had asked is, would Butte Silverbow provide opportunities to fish at Basin Creek to replace the opportunities that we've lost on Silverbow Creek and might not have, because right now it's not as good a stream as it should be. But that was an agreement that was made. After that was made, George Grant came in with a request to do a small project to develop the recreation plan for the reservoir area. George Grant completed that, and that plan is on the shelf. There was a few things that were holding it up, and one was the Basin Creek Dam needed repair. That project should be complete. I haven't seen how big their punch list is, but I believe the contractor has demobed and that his project is complete. The other thing we were waiting on is the reason the plant had to be built was because the carbon from the pine needles that fell on the forest floor were being dissolved into the water. And when you chlorinate water with high dissolved oxygen, it generates disinfection byproducts. And that was the reason that the whole filtration plant had to be built. So the pine beetle injury is still evident in any direction from Butte. They have made a good effort already to reduce the fuels in the Basin Creek area. But it's probably gonna be a couple more years, so we've been waiting on that to happen. So I think this is your signature project. You know, John, you talked about leaving a legacy. I think if we get this area opened up for the community, it's just like Highlight Canyon is to Bozeman. I mean, if you've ever, has anybody ever been to Highlight? 2, 3, 4 of you, and it's beautiful. This could be the same for Butte. So really, I think the drawbacks here, you know, we said it's Butte Silver Bows. I understand that the highest and best use of the reservoir is to provide potable water to the community. But practically every reservoir in the state serves both a source of municipal water and a recreation area. I'm not sure why Butte can't be the same. I mean, Bozeman can do it, why can't Butte? Helena does it, why can't Butte? But yeah, we need to protect the watershed. And there are ongoing fields reduction efforts in the area that probably this will have to wait. But in the meantime, we have this plan. I would love to see us get under a contract with Butte Silver Bow to do this. And maybe there are some things we could do now while the fields reduction is going on. And I do think this is part of, I think the hesitancy, Butte Silver Bow's part is, you heard Sean say it, he's got 56 parks. He's already maxed out. This is one more and it's a big one. So we need to have people in the community step up and be stewards for this area. And I think the people are out there. We just need to organize. But I think this is your signature project.
Did they ever finish that fish ladder deal at the south end of the lower reservoir to the upper reservoir?
No, that was put on hold because of the fields reduction effort. You know, they wanted to get a road across there to get back up to that west side to clean up the deadfall. And they didn't want to put that investment in the ground before they did the fields reduction. Sean's got his hand up.
So just a couple things. The plan has been taken off the shelf. You sent it to me and I have read it, so it's not sitting there, no one knows what's going on. But as far as the fuel reduction effort, the dam is done. As far as the fuel reduction effort, that is, I think it's a stretch to say that that's close to finishing right now. I took that road that's being expanded up to the upper reservoir and the road isn't even complete yet.
Yeah.
So they haven't even started logging the upper reservoir. So they're expanding the road so they can get logging trucks up there. I was up there, there is deadfall everywhere. So I don't know, it might even be a stretch to say that it's gonna take a couple of years. It might be longer than that, in my opinion, but around the lower reservoir, that has all been complete. So yeah, the next step is finishing that road to the upper reservoir, then getting logging trucks up there. And then I think we would be able to have the conversation of allowing, this is just my mind as Parks and Rec. There's obviously
Sean,
Water Department and Public Works and Chief Executive, but in my mind, then we would be able to start talking about having the recreation up there. But there's gonna be full-size logging trucks going up.
Yeah,
there
you don't want to make
next few years. And I'm not sure how close they are to the upper reservoir, but when I went up to right where they were expanding the road, and it looked like they still had a while to go to get, I don't even know if they're gonna finish that this year. So that's just, but I don't think that Butte Silver Bow's, I think that the commitment is just waiting and seeing when that project is complete.
And I do think if we get molten on the ground and open it up and people behave, that sets a good precedent for people behaving here. So, you know, it's all timing. I get it.
Yeah, and this Basin Creek is one of the 56, so it's not, we wouldn't be adding anything, just to be clear. We mow it and maintain it right now. We need to get irrigation, and we have an edible forest up there with our urban forester. So we are, working on that, but we've had to shut it down the last few years because of fire danger. I closed it in beginning of August, I think. And so we haven't been able to have anyone up there the whole year, basically. And there's just been a lot of construction. I mean, you go up, one of the barges is right in the middle of the park right now. That they were working on the day of. So we just have a lot of activity up there that's really good. So I don't want to say that Butte Riverboat's not committed to ever having recreation up there. It's just, we have a lot of work to do to get to that point.
And so how many years are you thinking? Just, I mean, yeah, is that what you're talking, kind of a decade?
I mean, it's a decade seems like a long time, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of deadfall up there. I mean, there's a lot of, when I took that road and the road's been great once getting around with it. But there's so much deadfall in that upper reservoir.
Yeah.
And it's basically been untouched, there's no, between that and the Highlands Road, I mean, it's laying everything. You
So
can't
will the
walk through
road
it.
stay after the introduction is done?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, that would be the road that goes, I've never taken there was already a road there, but I've never taken it.
To the upper,
Yeah.
yeah, and it was, I remember
sure
it was pretty bad shape.
Sketchy.
Yeah, it was pretty.
I've been out there a half dozen times and twice coming back down, you had to cut a tree off the road.
Yeah, I know, it's bad.
And we already do have recreation, not a lot of people know that we do have recreation on there is a Forest Service trail on the.
It's on the west
On the
side.
west side, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
the CDT, isn't it?
Yeah, so it goes up to the CDT and there's, that's actually used as a, razor four-wheeler trail. So there is some recreation on that side. So it's, people are hanging out up there.
So was that, we had talked about doing a trail connecting, was it that trail that they were gonna connect into?
I'd have to look.
I think it was more from the top of the park side.
Yeah, I think,
Because we were looking at going to like Copper Mountain. Was it gonna come out and go looking, I don't know, it's been too many trails projects.
I hear you.
yeah. All right. So should we, municipal water system improvements? We got the invoice, this is 0. But here's something for you to consider. This is another water project. It would require transferring funds from one of the other categories into municipal water. But this is something you could get going on now, and it's a good use of the money. And what it would be is, to finish the metering project. So under the Butte groundwater restoration plan, that was basically $30 million from the upper Clark Fork River Basin settlement for the damage to the bedrock aquifer, and that's what you see in the Berkeley pit. So that $30 million, one of the elements that a project that we did there was we put in free water meters, and we converted about, I think when we started the program, there were 4,000 metered accounts. And when we finished the program, there were about 8,000 metered accounts. And meters themselves don't conserve water, but it gives the ratepayer an idea of what their consumption is. And they become more cognizant of their usage. And we did see water usage go down when we went from 4,000 meters to 8,000 meters. there's about 12,500 users on the Butte water system. So the goal would be to get from 8,000 as close as we could to 12,500. And so if you, I think at the time when we did the project, it was about $400 a meter. So if you did 4,000, it'd be 1.6 million.
It's about $340 a meter now, because I'm trying to get one, they can't get any. So
Yeah, but that doesn't include fittings or installation. Pardon?
What did you say? Doesn't include what?
Fittings? That's just the meters, about $340.
They said to install it,
Fittings.
when I talked to them a couple days ago, it was
Okay.
$340. But you gotta pay for everything past the end of the line that's coming in out of the, wherever it's coming in.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that was about the ballpark number we had, was about to go from flat rate to a meter is about $400 a house. An interesting thing that we saw, when a call was made for, restrictions on sprinkling, usage actually would go up. And the one thing that we deduced was, well, people who aren't on a meter turn their hose on during that period and water that whole time. And we saw usages go up whenever we put on sprinkling restrictions.
on the non-metered
Yeah,
water usage, yeah, because you get 3,700 gallons flat rate.
correct.
And so,
Yeah, and if you go over that, you pay the next increment. So right now, a flat rate account is about $52 a month. A metered, if you don't go over that 3,700, is $37 a month.
it's 60. And May to October, it's 135.
If you're water.
Even if you don't water, it's $135. Everybody gets to pay that. And so it's rather expensive. I mean, I'm just finding that out because I'm in town now. So,
Cause he used to be on a well.
yeah. And
I'm on a well.
Yeah, so let's stay on it.
Yeah. But I think you guys are, how many of you guys are on meters? Is anybody flat rate? Are you paying like $52 a month?
No.
No, it's more than that.
Is it now?
60. And then May to October, you're paying 60.
You're 60. Okay,
Yeah.
pretty sure. Okay.
I tried to get this on a free meter deal. It's out.
I think it's $3,500
$500 or something to install it.
I'll get an update for those rates, but if you wanted a project that you could go on now that would make a difference, this is something for your consideration.
Pat, is that the finish dam there?
That is the finished dam. Yep, you can see that's the new face. This is probably the barge that's down in the parking lot.
Yeah, well, no, in the middle of the park.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's the new, a new dam. Back on this, what would happen though is if went from 8,000 meters to 12,000 meters, Butte Silver would have to redo their rates. And so you're not doing this for price, you're doing it for conservation.
Yeah.
Because if you're paying $52 a month, you got 4,000 people doing that, and now they're paying $37,000 or $37 a month, you're losing $15 a month from 4,000 people. John, what's the math? What's that? 6,000 a month times 12 months. You would, but who would have to pay the freight then would be the people who use that on the meters that are paying $37. They go up $5 or $6 a month for everybody. Because you're taking those flat rate people off and putting them on meters.
But the people on the meters from May to October that are on the meters aren't paying $176, $135 a month.
Or are you talking sprinkling fee?
Yeah, the sprinkling fees, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's whatever the balance is, I don't
Yeah.
know, but it's,
Yeah, and I think that's where you see the conservation come in is You know, when you see that water going through your meter and you're paying for it, you're only gonna put as much water as you need on your grass. So, yeah, but this is one, if you wanted to consider this, this is something we could start working on with the county now. But it would require transferring funds into this category. So
How big a deal is that?
it'd be a plan amendment, John. Yeah, so it would,
As in months?
as in, we would have to make an action item, run to the governor. We have to put it out for public comment, which is typically a 30-day period. So yeah, it's months. It's not weeks, it's months.
But in order to be able to do that, would the trustee have to approve it?
You would make a recommendation and it would go to his desk. Yes.
You would
And then
make a recommendation.
the plan would be amended. That proposed amendment would go out for public comment, and then we'd have to respond to comments. So,
Right.
yeah, at a minimum, it's a couple months. So here's kind of the recap, small projects.
Could you send this to us, man?
Yes, I can. You bet. I can just PDF this
Huh?
presentation and send it a little presentation.
Well, whatever, I don't wanna keep taking all these notes.
Yeah.
Give it to me.
Yeah, I gotcha. So this is, you asked me, John, what I do. This is kind of my summary. I transfer the Bonanza dump money to the Molten. Get a contract with Butte Silver Bow and the Forest Service to do the trail system and the fishing access at Molten. Reed Edge, I'm saying honor the contracts we have existing with Tech and Butte Silver. Look for those big opportunities and do more community plantings. Stream restoration. What I would do is I would investigate Blacktail from Lexington to Harrison. That's probably in that ballpark of 200,000. I think it's fitting, should take whatever that shortfall is on this project upstream with the Butte Country Club pond and the Butte Silver Bow sewer line. Right now it's 360. We're hoping to get matched from other sources, so 360 would be the ceiling there. But that's something that we could get going on soon. The Parrot area groundwater capture. That would be an amendment, John. So that would take a little bit more paperwork to get that done, but I think it's a worthy project. Another alternative for you to consider would be the meter project. I've talked with Butte Silver Bow. They were amenable to it. They do have a list of, I think, 160. Jim, do you know? There's at least 160 people right now on a waiting list. The other one, the Upper Silver Bow Creek corridor. I do the Parrot kiosk. I would write the technical papers, then transfer the rest of the money into one of these other categories where you need it. And recreation, I would dedicate everything towards making Basin Creek Reservoir all it can be. So, and yes, I will give this to you. So these are for your consideration. There's no action items tonight. Wanted to get it out on the table for you guys to think about. So really, what are the other options? Elizabeth, you said what if we just hit pause, walked away until remedy was done? Minimize our expenses for Butte Area 1. So that definitely would preserve this money. The drawbacks to it though is we would see no progress. Inflation right now is gobbling up a large part of our interest that is gained. And it does, I mean, if we hit pause, it's not for a year, it's not for 2 years, it's probably 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know if we waited till remedy was completely done. I think what I worry about is this thing right here, because you guys are all educated on this. 5 years from now, many of you might not be willing to come back, and to get the knowledge base into this group that you guys have is gonna take some re-educating. I don't want to lose your knowledge base. So those are the drawbacks. This is the positive, of course, minimizing our expenses and earning interest. So I'm not opposed to any of this. I think it's something we need to talk about and discuss what are the best things to do with this pot. So this is one that Doug put together. What we would continue to do is we would have to manage the tech and Butte Silver Bow re-veg activities. We would continue to look at, as you know, Jim talked about, the groundwater model that's coming out and other compliance related documents that come out. And we want to assure that, you know, we're not spending restoration funds on remedy. And we would still have to coordinate with DEQ on the Blacktail Creek project, because we do want to seek those opportunities where restoration can work with remedy. So if we just walked away and did nothing, we would miss out on some of those potential opportunities. So, you know, the other thing that, you know, I believe you're aware of, but, you know, Jim's got other projects. He's working on the Blacktail project upstream of Butte Area 1. I'm doing projects on the Yellowstone. Jim's got the Little Blackfoot. Jim, what other projects are you working? He's working on new claims.
Yeah, I work on new claims.
Yeah, I'm working on some new claims myself. So, I mean, Butte's just a fraction of our workload. So, I mean, it's not like when you see us, we're not dedicated completely to Butte, but that's kind of what I think would still happen even if we hit pause. So what next? And I know you guys had some other ideas, and Jim, did you pass out that one list?
I think so.
Did Jody get it to you? So John, you had asked about that list that, in that memo. That's all I could find on it, John, but I know you had some other items on that. Do you want to lay those out on the table, some of those other things? Ideas?
Well, no, I want to just continue to concentrate on 100%. I mean, if you just look at this list, you can tell in 2020, several of the projects that have discussed tonight were already on the drawing boards. And, you know, the top two under Blacktail Creek were ready to go. If we get done this year, presumably they'll get done next year. The Medford conversion is done. The restoration design is done. The culverts at Roosevelt Drive were transferred to somebody else, I guess. Are they gonna get done?
John, the federal land access planning grant, that's the Federal Highway Administration, and they did approve the grant for Roosevelt Drive. They did the design last year, and I think they're supposed to start construction next year. And those culverts, yes, are included in that project. So I did ask Mark Deary for an update a while back. We didn't have one, and I haven't touched base with Mark since then to see if there's any news on Roosevelt Drive. But it's approved, and they actually waived the county's match requirement. It was like 13%. It's like a $7 million project, so they were gonna have to pony up like, I think like almost 100,000, and they waived that requirement. So the Roosevelt Drive flap grant's a good thing. But yeah, It's the federal highway administration that we're just waiting on to execute it. So some of these items that we talked about tonight, you need an amendment to the plan, and you guys have been through that ringer a couple times now. I think that we amended the plan 4 times. So that's a lot of paperwork, and it's got to go through the public process. So that's months. If you guys have any other ideas that we didn't talk about tonight, let's share them. I mean, if you got something, you can put it in an email to us if you got it now. If you want to discuss it.
Should we open it to the council first to see if anybody have anything they want to share, champion?
Well, could you go back to the, your chart of recommendations? So where were you gonna recommend $2 million for municipal water improvements come from?
If you don't do this one, that's another one you could consider. But right now, where's the 2 million at? It's basically in stream restoration. Unless you wanted to transfer some from recreation, but those are the pots that have the big money in it. Re-veg, we have the contracts. I wouldn't want to mess with those. I wouldn't want to shortcut that effort. So it's really stream restoration. And you don't have enough money to do both the groundwater capture and the 4 meter. It would be one or the other.
Well, what about the recreation money and that's just gonna stay there?
I think you should keep it there. I think that's your legacy project. But would you move it? Certainly. That's, if you guys come up with that recommendation, we'll certainly capture it.
I think that the most bang for the buck of everything discussed here is to transfer money into the municipal water system and help the citizens who pay the water bills with improvements in the long term. And I would call for a proposal from Butte Silver Bowl on a formal proposal on what the highest priority improvements might be. And then put together this amendment in a more global thing. I agree 100% that the metering project, as you presented it, is worthy of immediate investment. There may be others. And I would think that we could push on your Silver Bowl a little bit and challenge the owner, the municipal system owner, to match the dollars that we would find in our money to get more improvements done and more relief. Like for these meters, if Bill's been told that to put a meter in his house is $340, I would say we should at least offer half of that. If there's 4,000 meters, is that what you said? You have to put in?
Roughly, yep.
So you do the math, 4,000 meters times $340 equals X. I would say we could offer half of X. So we could subsidize that and get more done for each dollar that the BNRC would invest. And same with other improvements that the municipal water system could use, that we try to earmark our dollars for construction and push on Butte Silverbow to do the engineering, to do the transaction costs, so they can control those costs without us having to worry about it. And that our dollars could go towards construction, actually buying these meters, actually building improvements that will have a long-term impact on providing safe drinking water long into the future. I would be in favor of asking them for essentially a grant proposal, what they would do with it, and use that to prepare an amendment to put more money into the municipal water system improvements from these other categories, because the other categories all seem tied to, particularly the stream restoration things. Now, I think that these two projects on Blacktail Creek that are ready to go, to whatever extent you are and Jim is successful in getting matching funds to finish it off, if we could provide a small amount, 50,000 or whatever, to help fill that gap, I think those are projects that we know are priorities and could get done. I'm not inclined to use BNRC money for the whole nut to cover the gap, but certainly some portion of the nut. I don't know quite what you mean by the Blacktail Creek from Lexington to Harrison. If you're anticipating that the creek would be rebuilt like the section is going to be from Lexington to the confluence, that's a little bit outside the four corners of what I think we can spend. And then there's that whole connection to West Side soils and what that will produce in our lifetime or not, I'm not sure. But, I think these other projects that you've discussed are tied to what still could happen under remedy. So over the course of the natural resource damage program, from the 98 settlement and the 2008 settlements, in my view and in my opinion, the monies that have been spent to improve the Butte drinking water system, including the dam on the Big Hole, now the dam at Basic Creek, the distribution lines, which is approaching, we're all in $100 million
Very close. Yeah.
of the settlement dollars, to me, has been the most impactful on the citizens of our community and have gone the furthest to replace and restore the lost resources that got hosed up and were the basis of the lawsuit. So going down that road some more seems to me to be entirely justified and would get us going on projects today versus tomorrow, in my view.
John, I'll follow up on ask you to road for that.
Yeah, I mean, Jim's here, Sean's here, I don't know what.
I mean, I guess just as long as
Oh,
we have our ducks in a row here. Do you want a proposal that would be for just the meters, or do you want a proposal on other water infrastructure? You just talked about distribution lines, or
Well,
how much?
it's a
Yeah.
consensus of this group on what
Yeah,
we want. In
Yeah,
my
I guess if that's what you,
Yeah.
just a little bit of clarification.
I would direct it as, I would ask you guys to do some of your own analysis.
Yeah.
And tell us what the priorities, most impactful near-term improvements would be. And I would like to make sure it includes upgrading everybody's meter and includes some stout cost share matching provisions that would allow us to spend our money in concert with commitments you would make in the near term to improve the water system.
So John, part of the first thing we did with Butte when the mines were put into the water system is.
In '98, when the first settlement was made, the NRD program announced that they would only take priority projects that had to get done sooner than later. And we proposed two projects in 2000. One was the Greenway, and the other was to begin making improvements on the drinking water system.
Yeah.
And so we proposed 117,000 linear feet a year to improve the distribution system based on the leak data that we had. And that was approximately $1 million, $1.2 million, then it grew to $1.4 million, $5 million, $6 million as inflation cost us. But we spent from 2000 to 2010, approximately $1 million a year, a little more, to improve what turned out to be 176,000 linear feet distribution lines in the urban area.
Yeah.
And just so everybody understands, that was not BAL funds. Those were groundwater funds.
Yeah.
Groundwater funds in particular, they weren't categorized yet. They were just NRD settlement funds from 1998 settlement. The categories of groundwater, aquatic, and terrestrial came in after the second settlement of 2008. So
I just want to make it clear that those were not BAO funds. The groundwater stuff that we funded under the municipal water system improvement was the water treatment plant.
Yeah. So this is Pat again. Sorry, we got this recorded, but the first thing we did when the funds were made available to Butte Go is we said, we need a plan. What is your system? What needs help? Groundwater restoration plan came out 2012. And it was updated in 2020, 2021. That plan's on the website. It does list, here's our system, here's our priorities to fix. So that's already there. I mean, when I talked to Mark Leary and Jim Keenan, I said, what's the next highest item on your list? So, but that's easily to get, John, because it's already been, they've already evaluated the system and where they need help. And they actually have been very successful going out and getting ARPA funds and TSET funds and RRG funds. So they're doing a great job. And what really helps is just having that master plan, the Butte Water Master Plan. I can send you guys a link to that. It's on the Butte website. But yeah, and I'll talk to Mark and Jim and say, hey, what's your next highest priorities, and write us a proposal for helping them get those projects implemented. So, Jim Camich has.
I just wanted to add, also add in 1992, when we went into the big hole, we sold the bonds and everything, we also put into the rates, we put 800,000 to $1 million into the distribution and transmission system inside inner city. We started that program, and then Butte picked up on it after the first settlement. So there for 8 years, there were basically 7 or 8 years, we were doing about 15,000 linear feet of improvements before that. which are good. We've got really, this Butte's got a pretty robust system right now.
Yeah. And I think there is one graph in that plan that shows Butte's water usage, historic water usage, and during the summer, it used to be like 13 million gallons a day, and now it's just over half of that, and a lot of it's been because the
You're
big
paying,
pipe
you're paying
is
with
new.
a meter, you're gonna use water more wisely, and that saves water both on the, on Basin Creek and on the Big Hole. I know we're not supposed to be worried about the Big Hole, but it's one system with three main sources, and
Yeah.
that's just, it just seems to me that the very critical and wise decision that the BNRC made in 2012, 2013 to invest the money in the drinking water system, the parent project, and then these other categories. This is an extension of the good work that's already been done. And
I guess I would just say one thing, when we allotted all the monies to these different pots, back when we were writing this plan, we spent a couple of years looking at all the things that needed to be done in the basin and looked at, we consciously put the money in for the Barrett and for the water treatment system. And we have been holding water or holding money in the stream restoration and the recreation pots, trying so until remedy was done so we could do something, because those are actual priorities that we thought about in 2012. They're still priorities to this day. We have done nothing when it comes to either one of those pots of money. We didn't put a ton in there, but there is money in there. And I guess I would like to see us actually do something with those recreation money that's recreation, and something with the stream restoration money that is actual stream restoration. I think those needs are out there. We've spent money in those other pots. We've spent a lot of money in some of those other pots. We've spent a lot of money on the big water system. I don't know. I think we need to think about that a little bit too.
So Pat, thanks for bringing this. This was what we asked for, right? So everything we're seeing here is gonna require an amendment. There's no plan you put up there other than a couple of, again, the feathering away the money kind of things that I was talking about before. We can do everything right now without amending. So John, to your point, yeah, pretty much anything we do up here right now, we're gonna find a big swing. Is gonna require an entire plan amendment. So we are a couple months out if we wind up going that route, but being able to select something to do something. But there were a couple other, I want to call attention to something. There were 3 requests at that meeting. One was from John, and 2 were from me. I'm even followed up with 2 emails have not been responded to. And there's a reason for that. I asked for the budget. Doug said, no problem. It's an XLS file. I said, fine, send it to me. I've emailed twice. You made a joke that do I have to do a freedom of information request just to get our own budget? And I sort of meant it as a joke, but I'm getting curious, I'm gonna have to. Why did I ask? Because everything you've got up there, you're right, inflationary is one of your points you made, so inflationary expenses are. One of the expenses we haven't had a good understanding on was the interior cost expenses of NRDP. And now, finally, in one meeting, we finally saw a number, and we were able to do some math and figure out what was going on. That's what we need this budget for. We need to have historically, what have you guys put at these things so we can understand as we look forward to these next things, what you intend to continue putting at it. If you go back to the budget, you had a round slide, it's a circle. So this is the thing you will still be spending money on. This goes to my third, because I proposed a resolution that no, you guys will not. Until we get a handle on what's going on. And I think that that's the 2 things that we're not responded to. And I think we do need to discuss these things here. Yeah, we need to take a look at potential big swings. I'm sorry, I don't see any big swings in that list. I mean, there were a couple of pretty cool, but I'm not sure I saw a big swing yet in the way to learning more. But again, until I can even get the budget to see what you guys have historically put at these administrative fees. I can't get at that, because if I go back to the 2007 formula document of the BAO, specifically page 25, paragraph 1, you were the only person, you, that are supposed to be doing implementation of the plan, including design, construction oversight, and ensuring proper accounting of all expended restoration funds. You, not working on Yellowstone, not working on anything else. In fact, when you read that paragraph, you're actually in charge. You're the one that's supposed to be telling NRD what they're supposed to be doing with the accounting. You're the one that's supposed to be doing that in the form of their document. So I'm not hearing that when I'm in here. I'm trying to empower you to say, hey, this is what your job actually is. So that proposal I had on the table last time was, no, we're not necessarily going to do any of that until we get a handle on what's been going on, because what's been going on is not what the document, again, this is which one? This is the,
Is it the process plan?
it is the 2007 Butte Area 1 Conceptual Planning Process Plan. And this is the formulative document why we're here. And it's not what's happening. And after 12 years, we're finally asking some questions. I'm sorry it's taken so long, but I think it took long enough that someone could put a number up that I could see and ask a question about, because we haven't been providing enough information to actually understand what's been happening. So again, we had this big discussion last time that we're not really cool with this money being used to investigate remedy, or what other people are doing in remedy, or what we're doing to protect ourselves against remedy. And I guess we were looking for an understanding, and that understanding was supposed to have come from the spread that I could have done some data analysis on and going back to the group, but that was not provided. So there are two other requests that you didn't bring to this meeting. One was, where's that spread? I'm requesting it again formally. Doug, I know you can hear it. I'm requesting this formally. And two, we need to talk seriously about what those costs are, so we can look at the projects that are being proposed and decide what we want to do. I'll tell you what I want. You wanted ideas from the council? I want to pay you your rate, as is the 2007 document says you're supposed to be doing. I want to pay your salary, your overhead fees, do your job. And no other jobs, not Yellowstone, not anything else. I want to keep that going for the next 10 years and live off interest earning. We'll have $10 million in the bank in 10 years. At that point, they'll be throwing off $600,000 a year in interest. At that point, I'm suggesting to the recreation, to your plan about here's your shining light. You meant said Basin Creek. That's part of the parks plan, just like we just started a moment ago. My proposal is we basically set up a fund on 10 side MTBOI. We just pay out interest earned in 10 years, every year to the Parks Department of Butte Silver Grove, and set up the legacy recreation through Butte Silver Grove's Parks Department. It's the only parks department, large parks department in the state that doesn't have its own budget. It's only funded through public works, and it doesn't have any access or control over its own budget. We're the only big city that doesn't have a parks department with its own budget. So we could set up a forever recreation based off interest earned.
I want to jump in here for 1 second, just because, I pushed to have another meeting quickly. And both Pat and Doug told me that they couldn't have the financial information for us that quickly because they had some other obligations. So we did talk about doing that in the next meeting. So I don't want to hammer him too much on that, but I did want to get back together and get all these projects out.
And thank you, and I'm really glad we did. Again,
Yeah.
this is what we're looking for. I'm just letting you know, I didn't see any of that really rose the criteria I was hoping to see. But we heard in that meeting from Doug, it's an Excel file. Just attach it to an email. That's a 30-second request. If you don't have 30 seconds up there right now, then something else is desperately wrong with that department. Just hit send. I got it.
Yeah, I don't think it's that simple, John. It's the state's financial system is archaic and old. It's not,
In that meeting, it was said it was a spreadsheet in Excel format.
yeah,
So that's not an archaic format.
well,
So just.
okay, I'm just correcting you now.
Okay.
It's
You're correcting Doug.
Well, I think he was saying that as a generality. It's not as simple as he's got it on his desktop to send out, because that is a 2-second, email. I get it. But again, NRD's committed to get you guys the information. Like Elizabeth said, it was too early, and we talked about it this morning. It was too early to try to get together for this meeting, but we will get you the information hopefully before the next meeting, so you'll have time to go through it, to weed it, to spin it, to pivot it, whatever you want to do with it, before we get together next time. But there's not an Excel file just sitting there. I just got it done the other day on a related issue with the parent, and it was 27 pages long, and it was every little line item, not categorized by anything. So I don't know how much time I have to spend to try to get that in some sort of semblance of sense. We'll get you the job.
But again, in that meeting, we were shown a semblance of sense. We were shown this is how much was spent last year in administrative costs with no projects. And then we said, oh, this is how much we could spend this next year. So there is a semblance of sense. Someone has categorized already. Because it was brought to us and presented to us as such. And I think the line item was like, what, 10, 1, 2, 115 or something like that. I mean, it was already been done.
Well, no, I think there's some mixing. We could talk about this quite a bit. There's some mixing and matching going on here. Our administrative costs and how those are applied to previous years spent, that's laid out in some of the plans. Exactly how that's done. I didn't realize that. Somebody had to tell me that, and I had to go read it. So that's sort of different than what all are we spending? What are we paying our design contractors? What are we paying for O&M? What are we paying for
Asked for
asphalt?
any of that. That's all included in this original plan that he's supposed to be accounting for. What I was asking for specifically is the cost that NRD has been putting on aside for their own payroll.
Gotcha.
On this, and that was covered in that. That was the question that came up. That's why we're sitting here at this meeting. That was a concept the last meeting. That was a concept this summer when it said the word veteran has been used over and over again. $200,000 plus last year, and we had no projects. We have questions. They're not being answered. We're not being given the information to answer them ourselves.
Well, I think this list here, I think that's sort of unfair, John. I think this list here, this is what the governor, this is what we vetted with the trustee. This is what they want us to do. The trustee wants this.
Previous trustee, true.
No, this is the current trustee.
So what we need to do is say, okay, fine, does the trustee understand what percentage of
Okay.
is being applied to this? If he does, then it's in a spread, it's an account, we can see it, it's a thing we've been asking.
Yeah, I know, I get that part, John. I'd like to see it too. I get that part.
John, this is Doug. Can you hear me?
Yes, Doug.
Yes, I understand that you asked for it last time. There was more than just that you asked for, though. You also asked for some other spreadsheets that, are not readily available. Miranda, as you have heard from Miranda in the past, she is working at getting that stuff together. We will get that stuff together and get it to you. But as Elizabeth said, it was not possible for us to get it to you, all of that information. And when we send that, we were thinking of sending it all to you as soon as we can, but getting it prior to this meeting was not possible for us at this time.
Well, then may I propose, Councilman, that we don't have another meeting until we do. We've been asking for this since August. I just propose we don't have another until we actually get it.
Well, I don't know, we're into the holidays now, I think, and if we go into another month, we're in December. I guess I'm asking for the council, are you wanting to meet in December, or do you wanna postpone it until after the holidays?
I want to be as soon as possible.
Okay,
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
okay,
As soon as we can.
I mean, we can't just keep.
that's good, so Doug, what's your timing on on the financials.
You know, I have to speak with Miranda. She's been sick this week, so I will have to get back to you on when we can get all that together. I'm assuming can be readily available, but I don't want to speak without talking to Miranda.
Okay.
So once you get the information, would you want to have like a meeting a week after that?
Sure.
Can
we put a deadline?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'd like to say.
But again, it needs to be in a digestible format. Give it to me in a spread. Give me to, I will do some estimate against it. I will do everything else again. Don't give us a flat sheet, you guys.
Today is November 7.
As long as we have it, I just need a
Day
date.
we say December 5, just try to make that.
Sure.
December 5 is a Thursday. 4 weeks.
So besides financials, you guys, will you be ready to look at some action items?
So,
No, you just want to look at numbers?
yeah. Me, no, I'm not speaking for, I'm just no way. Until we get a full grasp on what we've been asking for since August. This is 6 months.
Is there any chance on having it by the 21st of November, in 2 weeks?
That's a question for Doug. Did you hear the question, Doug?
I did, and as I said, I will talk to Miranda tomorrow. And Pat, I'll get you an answer so you can get back to folks.
Okay. So if you do get it though, are you proposing a meeting on the 21st?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is that a Thursday
Mm-hmm.
as well? So 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And Doug, I want to follow up with something that said here, this slide we're looking at now. These bullets are in what plan that was approved by what's the title and name of the plan, these bullets that were approved by the trustee? That comment came out a couple minutes ago, these points here have been approved by the current trustee, there must be a plan or document.
I think I said agreed.
Which one?
I think I said agreed. Agreed.
What does that mean and versus?
Doug, you want to explain it or do you want me to speak on it?
No, the issues that or the bullets that we pointed or we have highlighted here, we talked with the current trustee and they agreed with this. I would also say that, you know, it's a continuation of what the previous trustee has asked us to do. For instance, participating in the VPSOU consent decree negotiations. Working on that. The Natural Resource Damage Program did that at the request of the trustee, not out of our own decision, but the trustee was asking us to participate in those negotiations.
And follow up,
So-
Doug, did the trustee say use BNRC monies to fund you doing that?
The trustee was indicating or instructing us to use Butte Area 1 funds.
You recommended to the trustee to use BAO funds for these 7 bullets?
What was that question?
I think I heard you say that you made this recommendation to the trustee and he agreed?
Our current working relationship with the current administration is we actually propose or we update them on things that are going on. And this is one thing that we updated them on of this is where the BNRC was interested in going, is looking at one large project to try to use the to use the Butte Area 1 funds, or to do a pause on the spending to wait for Remedy to complete their work. So we had updated them on that. And their ask was, well, what would you guys need to do in the meantime? And this is what we proposed. This is what we presented them with. And this is all, yes.
All right, do you have any, comments from the public on any other projects or anything on what we talked about tonight? Oh, this is.
I would like to address what John brought up about the new water company and I agree, metering is wonderful. I have a real issue with that because there are many homes in our community that have leaks throughout their whole system. And most of those people are the lower income or senior citizens. And somehow that has to be addressed if you're going to ask for meters for the whole community. You've got to address that because otherwise, what's going to happen to those individuals? They will not have what they need because they don't have access and they don't have the funds to take care of those issues. And so the water company belongs to the citizens of Butte. Their water rights and Silver Lake belong to the citizens of Butte. And somehow, if that water can be used in way of gaining more income for the water company by other people who need that water and want to use it, and the charges worked out for that water, it would seem to me that needs to be a part of that whole decision of looking at what you're going to do for your water company. And the citizens were the ones who brought that water. So I'm not on that. So I'm speaking to say the citizens deserve some type of a credit in what you do and how you decide use of the water system, the use of the water, so that.
Yeah, Mary Jo, if I can add to that. So part of the metering project was not only to put new meters in every house, but we had 4 real-time radio read receivers, and there's actually one on the pole outside of this building. And what they do is they pick up the signal that's coming from the meter. And it's, I think a meter transmits a reading every 15 seconds. So if there is a leak in a house, these receivers see it, and if it's of a large enough use, that's flagged, and then the water company contacts that ratepayer to say, hey, you got a leak. And we found lots of leaks that way. So, not only are we doing the conservation through people thinking about it, but we also can detect leaks in the house that way as well.
And do they go a step further and help the senior citizen repair?
That's, I see your gap there, and that's something that you know, once it goes through the meter, it belongs to the customer. So yeah, I get what you're saying. Is if you're on a flat rate, you might have a leak, but you're not paying more for it. If you go on a meter, you have a leak, well, now you're paying for it.
And so I believe in this.
Yeah.
But I also
I get
know
what you're
that
saying.
there are other issues that need to be addressed.
Yeah.
Gonna take that one step further, what Mary Jo's saying, and whatever else maybe there, if we get to that point where we're gonna do something with the meters, et cetera, on the water system, maybe what we should consider is people that don't have the wherewithal or don't have the money, that we can find some way to equitably help them be able to afford to install those meters, because I mean, whatever, like John said, if we paid, say the meter was $340 and I installed the meter, it cost me $170. Well, there may be numerous folks, especially senior citizens, that's a hell of a lot of money for them. And maybe we can find a way to offset that cost to help them so that they don't, it's not a burden on them.
Yeah. And, to carry that one step farther, Bill, there's a lot of trailer houses that can't get meters because you put the meter in the crawl space and under a trailer, it would freeze.
Yeah.
So you have to do a meter pit, and meter pits are a couple grand, so, yeah,
And if they're in a trailer house.
they don't got money, yeah. Yeah, so yeah, there's some big issues to climb there.
I would reiterate exactly what you said, because a long time ago, we looked into metering our house. We did not because of the cost for a pit and the meter, and it wasn't worth it. It was not worth it.
Well, do I have to make a formal motion then to challenge, Butte Silver Bow to come up with a proposal?
No, I was talking to John.
So, the third main bullet here is apparently you are given the authority as recommended by BNRC, develop one or more restoration projects. I am asking that we ask for a formal proposal from Butte Silver Bowl on what the priorities would be, including but not limited to the metering proposal, and ask them to be creative about how to protect low-income people, how to protect the idiosyncratic issues associated with certain places that can't do them, fine. But if we don't get going on the projects, metering is gonna cost that much more, and we're not going to be able to contribute to it. So can we do that at least tonight?
I will second that.
Yep, I will get a proposal from.
I'd like to ask for a proposal from Parks Department to overtake. Get that through to you.
And if we want to do the Molten project, I'd like to ask for a proposal on what that's gonna look like as well.
And with regard to the Molten project, I think we need to ask whether this is a viable project that Butte Silver Bowl is going to implement and then take responsibility to maintain on into the future. I mean, we're not doing the project, the board members, and you're not doing the project as the BNRC or the NRDP program. It's them. We're giving them a grant to do it. I'm not, all due respect to you guys, I'm not seeing the commitment on this project. If you're in, great, let's get her done. If you're not in, be candid, tell us why, and we move on. And I appreciate the fact that it's got some decent merit, to pursue, but if the owner is not in, we're not in, and let's move on. Same with we've been through the Basin Creek Reservoir project, and we got it to the point where it was a real project, particularly on the North Shore,
Yeah.
where we thought there was some viable ways to increase the recreational opportunities. And from where I sit, our good ideas were trumped by this concern with fuels reduction and the threats to the reservoir. And despite our best intentions, the reality of protecting that reservoir took precedent over what we wanted to do. And I mean, the chart, has 1.3 million in that category?
Yep.
Yes.
And, all I can see is the buying power of our dollars is going down as we continue to wait. And so my focus is to use the current buying power now to get as much done as possible. And the legacy of this program is tied to improving the lot of our drinking water system. And I'm okay with that. It's so vital, it's so important. And I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't conserving their water, their drinking water for whatever reason. But we just like the restrictions we put in on the every other day, somebody's on a meter, they're gonna be a lot more attentive to how much water they're using and only use what they need to keep their grass green, not what they are paying for or what they think they're paying for, and use it just to use it, so they get their fair share of the flat rate that they're paying. That culture's gotta end in our time. And if we can be the catalyst by providing cost shares, providing subsidies to low income people, I wanna do that. And I don't mean to say that all of the projects we have had on the drawing board are not good. I just believe that that's the highest priority. I think we should keep going on that.
Just a quick question, the Butte Silver Bow Montana Tech contracts, do those sum up to the 1.8?
No, they were 500.
Yeah, it's a $500,000-ish.
Left,
Under contract.
under contract.
Yeah. That takes you through 2028.
But that would leave.
Could you go back to the chart, excuse me?
Yeah,
The original chart you sit on the first slide, go ahead, excuse me.
Oh, it's okay.
That one, John? Or
No,
Your first, this.
maybe that's on a different,
Oh, it was right.
here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so under the mine waste area reclamation, that 1.7 and then the add-on with the give back from the parent money makes it 1.8. Isn't that from the original 2.1 allocation that was made by this council back in the 2012 plan?
Yes.
Okay, so of that 1.8, how much is quote unquote under contract with the Silver Bow and Montana Tech?
About 500,000.
About 500, a third of it, if you will.
So we got 1.3,
That's in the
1.4.
category, not under contract.
That's not under contract. Now, we might want to put it under contract. We might want to continue particularly the tech thing. You know, that seems to be a very successful program. I believe the Butte Silver Bow side of the ledger is, you know, what we originally thought we needed that money for is being addressed more purposefully under the unreclaimed areas and the insufficiently reclaimed areas and those work plans. I am more confident that the goals of the mine waste category are being addressed better under remedy than we had hoped back then in 12 years ago. But the Montana Tech side with the feedstock of the shrubs and the trees and the species, well, that's something I think we should try to continue to support for the long term. But there is some money there that could be put into the category that is zero.
that is correct.
Yeah, it's earmarked, but not under contract.
And I would say that the amount we want to put in the category under municipal should be decided after we see some proposal from Butte Silver Bow on where we can do the most good.
Okay. So if you want to meet on the 21st, we want numbers. We want a bit of a review of our vote.
No, well,
Staff can move it up.
sorry, thank you. Yeah. I think, give me something 3 to 4 days before. Don't give it to me that morning. That's not cool.
Yeah.
That's why I said that.
That seems to me to be.
I'm not gonna be able to make that, so if we could.
Are you gone that entire week? I mean,
No, just I have another
Okay.
meeting that night.
if we got something on a Tuesday, could you guys make Tuesday?
Yes.
Yeah, Tuesday was,
Could you make daytime?
no,
Third,
yeah,
Just any Tuesday.
I won't be able to make the Thursday.
Okay.
fourth, whatever.
Twelve minus two,
Fourth.
10.
fourth works,
The 10th.
basically the fifth was the only one that doesn't work.
It doesn't work, so
Yeah,
I don't mind waiting until after Thanksgiving, but I don't wanna wait
till January.
much longer than that. If you keep this ball rolling. Cause if you're telling us that if we do come to a consensus on something and it requires an amendment, you know.
Yeah.
That's springtime goal, before we even get the chance to go forward with any plan, which means, you know, I think we all have a sense that we see this money eroding away to both action and construction inflation. And I don't want to give up on certain projects that we have had in mind, but maybe it's time. Come on.
So one of the other things that is gonna happen next week is a meeting with the TRC. So every year they kind of get together and have the chair come in and talk about what the BNRC wants to do. So that, I think, is it next Wednesday?
Yeah.
And so if there are things, I think I can communicate what I've heard today and I will put that together. But if there are specific things that you want me to make sure and tell that group, shoot me an email. You know, give me a call, either way.
And you guys should get an invite to that meeting. It will be in Helena.
And I think of construction inflation, John, and others have mentioned it, that's gonna be something we're gonna be talking about. Those numbers should at least go up, right? At least be shown. Construction inflation right now is to 1.5 below its interest rates. So we're making more money, not doing anything, but spending anything. So we're gonna be saying that, let's put the real numbers up and actually quantify them and not just say them and then assume they're true.
But operating expenses can go up.
But need not if there's no project.
Well, I agree, that's true.
Right?
Can I make one last comment?
You bet.
1983, you became superfund. We're sitting here in 2024. What has been done? Everything we did here.
Well, it was a lot of people, right? It was-
Absolutely.
Not least of which was this group pushing it forward, right? There would have been no project without.
Understand. But I say thank you to you too. You made a difference.
Ready to adjourn. Any motions?
Thank you.
Folks online, we're finished. So Doug, could you hit save on that recording?
Yes, I can. Yeah, just, we need to talk to Elizabeth about the motion. You shouldn't have had a motion, but.
Well, it was just to adjourn.
Did you not hear me?
Sure.
Thanks, Pat.
Yeah.
Works.
Did he need to? Or is it?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we'll see you.
Are you there, Doug?